having to navigate and being able to separate myself from this is what my client is going through, and even though it's touching something for me, this is about them right now, it's not about me. Everybody's story is so different and everybody's experiences are so different, and so I don't think I can look at somebody as like textbook, this is what this is, you know, like, okay, you have anxiety, this is what I got to do with you.
I was raised this way, and well, they'll be all right, I guess. And so kind of brushing it under the rug, it's like, well, let's take accountability. How can we fix this? How can we make improvements? Because
I don't think there has to be anything like actually wrong, like any symptoms that may be appearing for you to go to therapy. I think anyone can benefit from therapy, but have grace for themselves that, again, they haven't failed, they're doing a great job, and then there's just ways of connecting as they get older too, because I realize, like, as your child is going in through these different seasons, like, some parents don't know how to navigate those changes.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Coffee Breakup, where we have a licensed mental health counselor, Miss Leslie. How are you doing?
Super excited.
I'm super stoked to be here.
So you work alongside at Eden Therapy,
yes,
correct? Yeah. Give us a little bit of a summary of what it is that you guys are about.
So we are a faith-based practice.
Okay.
It's 3 of us. So we each have our little niche, like what we specialize in. I work with children and teenagers and families. So that's like my little groove.
So what kind of, like, take us through like a day-to-day. So what is it that you're responsible for? How do you set up? What are the kind of cases that you have to deal with? Give us a little bit about that.
So thankfully we get to make our own schedule.
Really?
So yeah, so I get to see which clients I want to take on and which ones I want to work with. I love anxiety, depression, OCD, identity issues. So a lot of that in teenagers. And working with families. So kind of establishing what the family foundation is like and what's going on in communication.
All right. So up until the teens, you said,
yeah.
Right? Okay.
It's like a critical age for so many, especially like nowadays. There's so much influence from either social media, obviously parents, school.
Mm-hmm.
So you're almost kind of like you play a vital part in their
Development.
And their growth and their upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a big position to be in.
Yeah. Honestly, I couldn't do it without the grace of God, you know, and thankfully in our practice, we really help and support each other, and we like bounce around what's going on and ideas, and maybe like Marian knows something that I don't know, and she's able to kind of speak that into me and being able to give me that like idea to help the clients in the best way that I can.
You say faith-driven. What sets you guys apart? Is there like is this a common thing? Is this normal that there's a lot more faith-driven, or does that even matter?
I mean, we take on clients of like anybody, so it's not just clients that may be Christian, but clients that are Christian, we're able to kind of incorporate inner healing, and we're kind of able to incorporate Jesus into our work, and we've seen the difference that makes. And we have a staff meeting every Monday, and we actually pray for each and every one of our clients, like the ones that have gone, the ones that are with us, and the ones that are yet to come. Yeah. I remember when I first did my interview with Angie to start working at Eden Therapy Co. 2 years ago, I asked her, like, hey, do you have, like, a wait list of clients that, like, maybe I'm going to get? And she was like, no, we're going to pray them in. Really? And that's really what happens. Like, I started working for her, and I started praying for clients, and they would kind of just show up. So it was awesome. It was really cool.
Yeah, start praying for some stuff.
Yeah. We got to do a lot of praying then.
It makes a difference.
I love that. That's awesome. And you said you've been with Eden for how long now?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
How come that age group, or how come up to the teens? Like, why that sweet spot? What is it that drives you? Because right before we started, you're like, oh, that's my mojo.
Yeah.
That's my jam. What is that? What's that all about?
Honestly, it's where I feel like I'm called to. Like, I think it's where I have the most grace with that population. Like, kids tend to kind of gravitate towards me, and honestly, it doesn't even make sense. You know, I think it's just the purpose that has been placed on my life and, like, on the inside of me, and I think that's what it's easier. It just flows out of me, you know. Like, I don't even have to try. You know, it's kind of just like I'm fulfilling my purpose because it comes effortlessly.
Yeah, like that's your thing. Like, that's your calling.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's like you're so excited to talk about the subject.
Yes.
Well, and that's why we brought you on here, Miss.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, we would love to learn a little bit more of what it is that you kind of do on a day-to-day, or maybe any specific kind of practices, or unless there's like some sort of guideline or template that you would use to kind of follow along for I guess who it is that you're treating.
Mm-hmm.
Or does it sound more of like a case by case? How do you go about the operations of your business?
So honestly, it's very individualized. I don't think there's like a standard, especially for therapy. I think it's so it's so unique to the person, you know, because everybody's story is so different and everybody's experiences are so different. And so I don't think I can look at somebody as like textbook, this is what this is, you know, like, okay, you have anxiety, this is what I got to do with you. You know, it's more so what is it that is like, what's the root? And I think that's what's so beautiful about our practice. Like we go to the root and we want to help heal that instead of just this is the symptoms and this is how you treat them, you know? So it's very individualized to the kid and to the teenager, to the family.
Interesting. So you have, because they're teens, obviously you have to have the parents involved, right? They're minors.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So the parent goes in with like, hey, listen, my child is having X, Y, and Z problems, and then you kind of figure out a way to. Do you do like one-on-one sessions with the parent first, or with the kid first, or how do you navigate? You know, the parent and then with the child. Maybe the child isn't comfortable talking in front of their parent.
Oh, true.
How
Yeah.
how do you handle that?
So we always start with an intake, and that is with the family, like usually. So as a family, they kind of tell me what's going on, what it is that they're noticing. At some point, I'll ask the parents to step out, and I'll connect with the kid. And so I'll be able to ask them, like, okay, tell me what's going on from your side.
And do you also just privately speak to the parents as well, leaving the child outside to get their opinion as well, or?
Not on the intake, because in the beginning, it's very important that the kid learns to trust you. So it's all about building rapport and establishing trust. Like, I can't work with somebody if they don't trust me. I can't start digging deep into, like, tell me your deepest, darkest fears and, like, all of this pain that you've experienced when they have no idea who I am.
And does being that young, does it make it more difficult because maybe you think, they just don't understand yet? Or do you think that it's easier because they just absorb things a lot easier at that age?
I think it depends on the kid.
Really?
Some are very open, you know, and they're like, they can tell you anything in one sitting, and then others are a little bit more reserved. And those are probably the ones that have experienced a little bit more of the tougher things.
How long is normally are your sessions in terms of how long do you stay with the kid? Is it a couple of months? Do you have patients that have been with you for maybe even longer, or is there?
How long is there treatment cycles?
Yeah.
How long
Depends. Also very individualized. I've had clients that have been with me for 2 years. I've had clients that have been with me for 6 months, and they're like, okay, I'm good to go. You know? Yeah. So it really just depends.
What have been some of your? Is there like a case that you can think of that is like really, really challenging, or that really puts you in a position where, like, man, like this is at first this is tough?
Honestly, I feel like it's the ones that bring up and highlight your own things, right? So that's why I've been in therapy just as long as I've been a therapist, right? Because they really, clients, I feel like they illuminate a lot of things that maybe you haven't gone and processed and like worked through yourself. So it's been those like having to navigate and being able to separate myself from this is what my client is going through. And even though it's touching something for me, this is about them right now. It's not about me. And then going to my therapist and being like, okay, this is what was coming up for me. Let's talk about that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah. So it's helped me grow a lot too.
Not bad.
I wanted to ask you because just before you had asked that, you had said that you have to try to build really rapport and build trust with these children. And I think that the way that you do it, I mean, it's probably individualized, but I'm sure that there's some sort of method that you try to break them out of that shell.
Yeah.
The reason why I'm asking you this is because maybe there's some parents that they're having a tough time trying to talk and have them open up.
Yeah.
What is it that you do? What tactics do you do? How is it that you kind of create this environment for them to feel safe? And what would you tell the parents in order to kind of mimic that, in order for them to build that relationship with their children as well?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just really meeting them where they are and getting to know them specifically. Like, what are the things that interest you? What are the things that you like? What are the things that, you know, bring you passion and get you excited? Like, getting to that and being able to incorporate that into what I'm doing with them. And then getting to know about their lives. You know, what is their family like? What has their life been like? Have they moved a lot? Like, I get to know a lot of that, and then I get to be able to connect with those parts of them.
Have you had instances like when you start talking to them that they're really reserved, then you start to...
Yeah. And I think humor is a big thing for me. Like, I just try to keep it very lighthearted because therapy can be heavy. You know, it can be really intense, and some kids don't know how to handle that. Like,
do they even understand that they're in therapy, or do they just think that's speaking to a lady?
I mean, some of them do. Some of them are kind of just like, okay, I'm going to come have fun here for an hour every week. You know, it just...
I guess it's whatever they're comfortable with, you know, because maybe they can't really like rationalize it at the point, but as long as that's like a safe space where, okay, like maybe I can be honest, I can be vulnerable, I can just, you know, be me for 45 minutes, an hour. I think that's what really matters.
When should a parent or even a child be, I guess, the perfect candidate to start seeing someone like yourself? Does something have to happen? So I guess what I'm trying to ask is, when do they approach you? When would be the right time to approach you if necessary?
Honestly, my hope is that as there's more awareness with therapy, it just the stigma of like there has to be something wrong for you to go to therapy kind of like subsides and goes away, because I don't think there has to be anything like actually wrong, like any symptoms that may be appearing for you to go to therapy. I think anyone can benefit from therapy.
Sure, so really quick. Yeah. But I can also, couldn't you see maybe some people who will say like parents would say, well, I'm not gonna, like, you're too young. If like it's my child, I'll just teach him myself. Like, this is how I was raised. This is how they have to be raised. Why would I take them to some sort of stranger? Like, what are they gonna tell them is different? So what do you say to those people? How do you handle that?
I've just learned to honor anybody's like opinion of where they're at, you know. And I think if something comes up, or I've had clients that their family doesn't think that they need to go to therapy, but they've asked to go to therapy. You know, and so it's the parent has been able to honor that even though I don't think they need it, they're the ones asking for it. So maybe there's something going on that I'm not seeing.
But I guess what would you tell to a parent that maybe you think like, you know what, they should maybe be a little bit more open-minded to it? Like, what's something that you can kind of tell the parent to make them feel more comfortable to be like, hey, like, it's not a big deal. Like, it's okay for them to come to therapy at this age.
Yeah.
What would you tell to someone who's probably a little bit more reserved about that, for them to be a little bit more comfortable?
It's just getting to know the parent too. I think a lot of parents think that if their kid's going to therapy, it's because they failed as a parent. You know, like they did a bad job or I've let them down. And so they can be very guarded with the therapist because they think, oh, I'm going to be replaced. Like this person's going to connect more with my kid than I do, which is just not the case. My hope is to build bridges within the family. And I always say the joke of like, my goal is to not have work, right? Because I want to work myself out of the job because the kid stops coming to me because they've got you and they can fall back on you and they feel safe and secure with you. So my job as a therapist, especially with kids and teenagers, is to build those bridges, right? I want the kid to go to the mom and feel safe and connected, or go to the dad or go to the cousin or the brother, whatever it is, and feel the same thing that maybe they can feel with me.
Wait, so then hold on. Do you, because, okay, so on the intake, you speak to the parents and then the child. How is it then only with the child after that? So how often do you then reconnect with the parents to kind of talk? Is it always?
Yeah, I always stay connected with the parents. I want to know what's going on at home that maybe like the kid's not reporting to me. And then I want to know like how is he doing in school, or how is she participating with her colleagues and things like that, which information I'm not going to get sometimes. So I stay connected with the parents throughout. And then as I've built trust and rapport, and maybe I've given the client the tools that they need to be able to express themselves better, then I start having family sessions where I bring in the parents too and I work with them.
Yeah, that was my concern, because I guess you can really be with a child and kind of helping them and guiding them and doing the work with them.
Yeah.
But then I also feel like the parents also have to do their part to a certain degree. Do they not?
Yeah.
So then that's where you also will do the family session to make sure that everyone's kind of doing their part.
Exactly. And I have so much grace for parents because nobody's given a manual of how to do it right. You
Yeah,
know, so it's all the tools that I have, I want them to be able to have, and to be able to have grace for themselves that, again, they haven't failed. They're doing a great job. And then there's just ways of connecting as they get older too. Because I realize like as your child is going into these different seasons, like some parents don't know how to navigate those changes.
I got something else also there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you ever deal with as you can see, I'm very fascinated, I'm very excited about this. Do you ever feel sometimes that when you're dealing with one of the clients, with one of the children, that you're like, you're fine, it's just your family, like it's just your parents. Like if your parents, maybe we coached them on this, like if they just did this a little bit differently, when you wouldn't be feeling like this. Do you ever feel instances like that?
Sometimes I
think it starts maybe from how they're being nurtured at home.
I mean, I think it is. I think we can only establish relationships that we've seen. So if I'm seeing patterns in how a child is addressing relationships and establishing relationships, then I go back to what was his foundation or what was their foundation at home. And I think parents are the foundation of the home. Sure. And kids are only as healthy as their parents, you know? So if their parents are struggling in their marriage, or if parents are struggling financially, like all of those burdens, whether they know it or not, fall on the kid is like very receptive to it.
That is so true. Just one more thing, because I can feel like a lot of parents, and he had said it earlier, that they may feel guilty. Like, yeah, like there's certain
I would feel guilty.
Set of failure. Like, wow, like my kid has to go to therapy. And you had said it earlier, like I must be doing something wrong, and it's like that's not necessarily the case. And even if, you know, maybe you did, you know, but just ignoring it is not the answer. It's like, okay, well, maybe I made some mistakes along the lines. Well, therapy is going to help cure those those mistakes, you know, instead of saying, well, you know, I was raised this way and well, they'll be all right, I guess.
Yeah.
And so kind of brushing it under the rug, it's like, well, you know, let's take accountability. How can we, you know, fix this? How can we make improvements, you know?
And I always tell parents too, like they learned how to parent from their parents, and their parents weren't perfect. So therapy just gives insight into maybe this is where we could do things better, right? Like it was like this before, but it's not the same pattern and cycle I have to replicate again. So it just gives insight, which is why I say anyone can benefit from it, right? Because we are going to parent our kids the way maybe our parents parented us. And we may have pointers of like, this is the times that I didn't feel safe, or these are the times that I didn't feel validated or heard, and I don't want to do that again with my kids, right? So we may have those, but there may be some like hidden in the back that we haven't brought to awareness that we don't know. You know, and so we'll replicate that again because we only replicate relationships that we've seen.
Man, that's nuts. Because think about it, man. Because you can just be raised some certain way, and you can just be teaching your child some sort of way, and then you would think therapy is so tabooed for yourself. Imagine that what they may be thinking of therapy for their own children, like having to wrap their head around that. To your point of that whole guilt, what we're talking about, man, that must be so devastating, and it almost feels like they would be like the toughest ones to really like crack that for them to really start thinking like, man, this is probably what I need. Like I should be seeking some sort of help.
Yeah. And the hard part is guilt turns into shame, and that's even heavier to carry, you know, because there's this shame that maybe I'm a bad parent, right? Because guilt sounds like, oh, I did something bad, but then shame is I am bad because of what I did. Right, so it gets heavier, and then I don't want the kid then to feel that the parent's shame, because then they start becoming really familiar with shame.
And then the kids they just start seeing it, like they start absorbing that.
And it's like unhealthy for everybody, you know.
And it's so it's not unfair, but it's just like it sucks because it's not like you want them to feel that way. It's almost like you hold yourself to a higher regard and you want to try, but just like you said, like there's no manual of how to be like, oh, there's books that you can read, but at the end of the day, you kind of just have to roll with the punches to see how it is that, you know, how the child is that you get. Hopefully they're a good kid. They're not, you know, little rascals. But if they are, then how do you navigate that? And then that's why I feel like therapy is kind of almost like a guide or like an aid of what it is or how to properly have some sort of sense of direction of how to provide the right therapy and the right counseling, right? So is there some sort of guide or direction, or maybe like from A to Z where you have to do these steps to get the right information, maybe certain questions that you ask in order to get the answers to do the full treatment? How do you go about that when it comes to the client that you get?
Again, just becoming really familiar with their life and their experiences. Like I like to put myself in their shoes. So what was it like for me to be 2 years old and maybe it moved across the country? Or maybe we were 3 years old and my family my dad lost his job, and then we were like financial need. Like I have to really understand what it was like for this kid growing up in the context that he was growing up or she was growing up, right? It's becoming really familiar with what was this child's life like and what is it that I'm seeing, so how can I pair what I'm seeing with where he's been, right? Like, because it all goes back to our life experiences. And from 0 to 7, those are our crucial years where we learn our life patterns. And we don't think that it matters because we're like, oh, they were too young to really remember. They were too young to really understand what was going on. But our body keeps the score, and our body has memory, and it remembers those life experiences. So if we moved a lot, then the kid doesn't know how to have a secure home or like to be stable, right? It's like you'll see that kid maybe bouncing from relationship to relationship because it's the same pattern that they had when they were younger. Yeah.
So you have to be very much like in tune with yourself and with your past, and almost kind of like pull yourself back to and thinking about like your past and how it was for you, maybe at a certain point in your life. And you have to be very like, there's a lot of emotional intelligence that goes into it because you have to be aware of your own situations and your own past, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel like when you were younger, was there a point in your life where you wish maybe you had somebody like yourself today that is impacting all these other kids? Do you feel like when you were maybe at that age, there was somebody that you wish you would have had, you would have been able to talk to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm able to talk about now, because I'm at a place of victory, because I've been able to heal from things like that, is because it's distracting me.
That was a good. I like that one. Victory.
It's because I didn't feel like I had a lot of guidance growing up. You know, I felt like my mom is a beautiful mom, and I'm so grateful for her. But she I feel had gone through so many experiences that maybe she hasn't worked through, that she wasn't very emotionally available to me because of all the things that she was carrying, you know. And then my dad wasn't really in the picture. He was inconsistently in and out. So I just felt like I lacked guidance a lot growing up. And so I learned to be really independent and to do things on my own. But it always came from a place of maybe like I lacked, you know. And so it ended up in like, when you lack something, I feel like you go to the other extreme and you start striving. So I strive to be better all the time and to know everything and to be the best of everything that I was doing. You know, I always wanted to be like perfect. So I had like this crazy perfectionism, right, that sometimes still peaks up. And, you know, I would beat myself up if I felt like I didn't do things at 150%.
Yeah.
You know, and so all of that, I was able to kind of like realize it came from all the things that I had gone through, all the patterns. And so every time I work through something and I heal something, I know it's going to be able to be fed into who I'm working with. And maybe not just my clients, right? Maybe it's somebody that I encounter at a grocery store that I'm able to speak life over because I've been able to overcome something.
Right. I love that. So the current, do you have somebody in your life who's doing for you what you're doing for others? Like how you're impacting other people, right?
Or her therapist.
My therapist,
your therapist
Angie, is honestly
Okay.
amazing. She's shown like so much light into all of these areas of my life too. And I think the community that I've been able to build and God's been able to like help me build through my church has also allowed me the space to be able to do that and to have that same life that I'm speaking over people constantly.
Yeah.
I feel like it's poured back into me, you know?
Because it's so important, because you know there's a saying that says you can't pour out of an empty cup.
Exactly.
Right. So it's like, especially if you do for others
Yeah.
and others and others, you continuously. But if you don't feed yourself,
Yeah.
or you know, replenish yourself, it's
Yeah.
like somewhere you're gonna run out, you know, and
Exactly.
you won't be able to give,
Yeah.
you know. So that's why I think it's important to have
Mhm.
a good support system, you know, and
Yeah.
people who kind of do for you what
Yeah.
you're doing for others. You
Yeah.
know? I love that.
Exactly.
What would you tell people who, just in general, like those that are thinking about therapy and they're kind of on the fence?
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell them to give them that last little push?
Honestly, I think the most important thing is going into it open-mindedly. Like, even if you haven't experienced something that you think is affecting you now, just know that you're going to receive insight, right? And you're going to have somebody that's a safe space that you trust, that you can kind of just pour whatever it is that you may be carrying from work or from life experiences or from relationships, whatever it is, and they'll be able to speak into that area with you. And the most important thing is connection, right? So one of the first things I always tell any client that comes in is, it doesn't matter if it's not me. If we don't connect, like, I'm not going to hold you here and think like I'm going to make you stay, right? Like, the most important thing for me is that you connect well with me and that you feel like you're going to be able to trust me and work with me, right? Because I'm not meant for everybody, you know, just like I know everybody's not meant for me. And so I don't take it personal when a client says maybe this is not going to work out, right? The most important thing is that you feel a connection to your therapist. That's where the true healing works.
Yeah, I feel like it's a little frustrating too, because I can see how someone maybe will be so reluctant to trying, and then they finally try, then they go to one therapist that doesn't work out for them, and then they're like, fuck this, like this is stupid, I should have never come here. But I guess it's more of not giving up, kind of still like giving it a second, third try, even fourth, you never know,
Exactly.
until you find the right person. But I feel like when it comes to therapy, I think it is important to be open-minded to a lot of things, but it's also important to listen to somebody else. You know, we have our group of friends, and sometimes we don't have the best group around us because maybe one person is going on all the time, or they're just not really your vibe anymore, or they're just kind of practicing things that you no longer practice. I'm very fortunate to have a very very healthy friend group, you being one of them. And you also know the rest. I mean,
Of course,
basically your friends too. And even my girlfriend tells me all the time, because like we sometimes, you know, we talk about her friends, and she has good friends, but you know that sometimes like they still take a little bit of more time to develop. But I'm very fortunate to have a really, really good friends group where she even sees it. She's like, man, like you guys just really care about each other.
It's amazing.
Right? So it makes me really happy to know that. And I know that they're always looking out for my best interest, and I know that they have my back.
That's awesome.
So I'm very proud to say that, but other people may not have that.
Yeah.
So now they're getting advice from those individuals. Are they looking out for your best interest? Do they really understand your situation? Are they even paying attention to your situation? Because I also feel like a lot of people kind of are selfish whenever they kind of give advice, or they're trying to give you some sort of I guess counseling or whatever. And then you have your family. where your family, depending where you're from, you're Cuban, I'm Cuban too. My parents will tell me something, and it's like, you tell them one thing, and they're like, oh, you were talking about on the domino table, where it's like, oh, you know, in Cuba, you don't have this and that and that. And it's like, dude, I'm going through my own problems. They're like, oh, in Cuba, we have bigger problems. And it's like, I get that they're bigger problems, but these are, unfortunately, these are my problems, you know? So then they may give you some sort of advice. Yeah. So I think anyone who's thinking about therapy, I mean, try it. Try it again. Try it again. Who knows? Maybe the first person may not work out for you. Maybe the second person is the one that worked out for you. And after the third or fourth try, you're like, nah, it was a second therapist that I went to. Yeah. But try. I mean, the people around you, even if they love you, I think it'll be important for you to get some sort of other ideas and other feedback from someone who's a professional, maybe has something else to offer, who doesn't really know you. They just know the situation. They're not really thinking about your best interest. They're not thinking about what you love and what you love and what you don't love, yes. But ultimately, it's to give you a guide into what's the solution for whatever it is that you're going through, that you yourself are probably struggling to identify. Your friends aren't really going to understand, and your parents are only going to think like, well, you're my child and I want to protect you, whatever it is, even if it's not in your best interest, but it's going to protect you. So I think that should be a good pitch for anyone who's really thinking about therapy. Get a second opinion, listen to someone else's advice, and maybe that can guide you into the direction of the solution that you're looking for. So you had some things that you had written to us. What are the basic needs for kids? You put 4 S's.
Yeah.
What is that?
So that's dance equals 4 S's. So every kid, in order to have healthy attachment, right? So to be able to show up securely in relationships, they need to feel safe within that relationship. They need to feel seen. They need to feel soothed, right? So if they're in distress, that they're able to like have somebody that's helping them regulate, right? And then they need to feel secure, right? Knowing that they can trust, and I don't have to doubt that my mom's going to show up the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th time, right? I don't have to doubt that anything that I do is going to make them remove their love from me. Yeah.
That is so important. I never thought about that. Interesting.
So they need to feel safe. What are some things that could be done for them to feel safe?
So that just goes with physical safety, right? Like making sure they have shelter, like food, water, like the basic necessities. And then also feeling like emotionally safe. Like, do I trust you? Can I open myself to you?
And really
are you able to, are you able to handle my feelings, right? Like all of that goes into safety.
What about seen?
Feeling seen is, am I acknowledged, right? The things that I do, are they pointing? Yeah, exactly. You know, are you paying attention? Right?
Yeah, like attention giving. Yeah.
And soothed?
Soothed, again, if I'm in distress, if I'm dysregulated, if I'm really like...
Can I count on you?
Yes, exactly.
I can do this too. Secure? Secure.
So
secure you outside of you.
Yeah, so those 3 goes into secure too. You know, like you can't have secure if you don't have the first 3.
Do you set some sort of... So when this happens, how do you, I guess, train someone for this? Is this something that you would kind of help the children to feel that way, or do you then coach the parents and say, hey, this is what we need to focus on in order for your kid to build this relationship with you? Is that it's more for the parents? It's
both, right? So if I want to have a secure attachment with this child, right, where he's able to trust me and communicate with me, I need to make sure he feels safe in my office. I need to make sure that she feels seen by me, right, that I'm able to acknowledge what she's telling me and asking me to understand. And then I need to make sure that I can soothe her if she's emotionally dysregulated, because if she doesn't know how to regulate her emotions, my job is to be able to teach her, right, and give her the tools that she needs to regulate. And then that's where I build a secure relational, you know, connection with this client, because we have a therapeutic relationship, and it's like any other relationship. You're not going to open up to somebody that you don't feel secure with, right? It's going to be really hard for you to discuss with somebody what's burdening you and what's heavy for you if you don't really trust them, if you don't feel secure with them.
Right.
Interesting. Have you ever had to deal with a case, which I think you asked it earlier in the beginning, a case that's really been eye-opening for you, or maybe something that really taught you a big lesson about maybe yourself, or redefined everything that you've learned? Has there ever been like one kind of child, or maybe a set of cases that you're like, man, okay, I have to do this more or something? Or maybe it really stood out to me.
Honestly, I think each case has taught me something, right? And so I've been able to, like, all those pieces, put it together. And again, I bring it to therapy, or I bring it to God, right? Because that's, for me, my faith has really been like a cornerstone of where a lot of my healing has come from, right? So it's like we were talking about, you can't pour from an empty cup. Like I get poured into from my faith, right? So that's helped me be able to really see like things in myself that maybe I'm not too proud of, or maybe things in myself that still need a little bit of work, right? Or ways that I can be a better therapist, right? Because maybe these clients are illuminating things for me that, you know, I still don't have victory over, right? Or I want to have victory over, and that's kind of my push of like, okay, you know what? This is a little bit more work that I have to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
The boundary. No,
I'm going
Yeah.
off of the list that she provided for us. That you had put development, crucial ages and milestone.
Yeah, so the development was a 0 to 7,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
And
okay,
so
yeah.
we had talked about how identity is something that we've been seeing, like, you know, so much in this generation. And so I have so much grace because on a lot of that, when we see things of like what's going on in this generation, and I hear things like that, it's usually between 13 and 21. And that's actually exactly what we are doing during those ages, like in our development, during the ages of 13 to 21, which is like those teenage years. That's what we're doing. We're developing identity. We're figuring out who we are, right? And so if we don't have guidance and we don't have a foundation maybe in our parents, right? Who is speaking life over us? Who is speaking identity over us? Who is telling us who we are? And I think sometimes maybe we leave it up to culture.
Yeah.
And in culture, you're kind of like,
Right.
you know, everything is fair game. But if it's important maybe to not impose identity, but it is important to speak identity over our kids, right? Because if we are not doing it, who's doing it?
Yeah, the parents it's their job,
Yeah.
their responsibility.
But then how do they do that then?
It goes back to the parents' identity, and it goes back to the parents have a vision for the kid, right? The parents have a vision of who is my son, who is my daughter, who is she put on this earth to be, and that kid is trying to figure out who they are and their purpose and why they're here, right? Because it's the reason why we all live our lives the way that we do. It's because we think we're put on this earth for a reason,
Sure.
right? And so if our parents don't help us see that vision, then we kind of just rely on, okay, what is fulanita doing in the corner, right? Or what is this kid doing, and why is this kid doing that better than I'm doing? And then we start comparing ourselves, and we tend to compare where we think is our weakest things to other people's strengths, right? So it never ends up fair game.
That's true, actually.
But so, because I think the and this is like a really controversial take as well, because it's like, yeah, you have the parents who can say, well, this is my son, this is what the vision I have for him, or this is my daughter, whatever. But then there's so much like attention coming from like the schools, the teachers, like so much has been happening in the past couple of years. It feels like that, where it's like you can identify as who you want. You can transition if you're 12 years old from a boy to a girl. So it's like, and some of them are very touchy subjects, and I understand that, and to a certain degree, I do respect people's decision. But it's like, where do you draw the line? Where do you say, well, this is my child, and I want to raise my child how I believe he or she should be raised. So it's like, for you, because you deal with kids every single day. What is your what is your take on that? Like, what do you think is the appropriate way of handling this? You know, without, you know, stepping on other people's toes, or without, you know, offending anybody, which at this point you cannot offend anybody anyway. Like, everybody gets offended.
Have you had to deal with this situation like that before?
Yeah, and I think we see it everywhere, right? And especially now, right? Because it's more vocal now. Not that it hasn't been an issue before, but it's a lot more vocalized now.
Yeah, everyone has to know how you're feeling.
And I think to answer your question, it's individualized again, right? And it goes back to kids need love. They need so much love, and they need a lot of boundaries, right? Because they think they know what's best for them, but they don't know what's best for them. Because at 7, I'm sorry, I did not know what was best for me.
No, 100%.
You know?
I only knew as much as my 7-year-old brain would allow me.
Exactly. I thought sitting down and having a can of Nesquik was good for me, and it definitely was not, right?
And you're also so easily influenced by other people, and like, oh, your friend sees this, maybe this TikTok, whatever, and now you say, well, if maybe I'm actually a boy. In reality, you're a girl. Yeah. You know, so it's like, we don't have kids, you know, so I can only imagine, but I have friends that have kids, and they're like, well, you know, my kid goes to school, and then it's like, these kids are, you know, 10, 11 years old, and the teachers, you know, what they hear about, like, lesbians and trans people and like this and this, and I'm like, I think there's a time and a place for everything, and it's like, that place and that time is not when you're 11 years old in a classroom in middle school or whatever. I think that's overstepping the boundaries, right? What you had said earlier. So it's like, man, being a parent is tough, because you can only control really what's happening in your household. But when that kid goes to school for 6, 7, 8 hours, it's kind of like, what can they do?
Yeah. And
You know?
That's
I
crazy.
again, like it's going back to 13 to 21, our job is to figure out our identity. Like that's what we're doing during that time.
Yeah.
So that's why I have so much grace for it. And like if a kid's confused or doesn't know or is exploring different things, it goes back to the belief system that maybe the parents have been instilled in the home, right?
Okay.
Because that's our foundation. Then as we start going to school, as we start surrounding ourselves with friends and sports and things like that, we have more ears. Like now we have more voices in our ear, right? Because now we're exposed to different cultures and different belief systems and different values. But if you have solidified the belief system at home, that's what the kids are going to go back to.
Right.
You know, like you build the child up in the way that you think that they should go.
If you have a child that comes to you and they say, well, you know what, I feel like I'm, born into the wrong body. I feel like I'm a boy when I'm really like a girl, whatever, vice versa. How would you approach that, if you don't mind me asking? Because that's a very difficult question.
Yeah.
That's delicate too.
But yeah, if you
we're
come,
gonna get canceled for that question.
no, I mean, why? It's
Yeah.
educational. If you want to answer, if not, we can.
Answer.
I haven't had it. I haven't had that.
Okay.
Well,
I
what
haven't had
he
a
asked you,
client.
what would you do?
Yeah.
If you did.
Honestly, just explore. I have to if I judge or if I go from like, this is wrong, that's it. The kid is first of all, not going to trust me.
Sure.
Second of all, already going to feel invalidated. And I can only imagine the inner turmoil that they're already in. And then you have voices telling them, you're crazy and you're dumb and this is ridiculous and that you're wrong. And, they're already getting all of that from everybody else. So I'm not going to add to that, right?
Yeah.
I'm here to get really curious as to why do you think that way? What's going on? All right, where did you learn this? Like all of this. I just want to like soak into all of the knowledge. And then from there, let's talk about it. Like let's explore.
Would you would you personally support the decision of let's say the parents ask you for consult, like, hey, he wants to transition to a girl?
We're against it, but not with everything that we're finding. Yeah, we're the couple right now. Okay,
And
and
we go to you.
hey, little CJ is having some. Is that what Heasty called your potential child? Whenever you guys talk about-
CJ, and then
He would
sure.
be like, oh, that little CJ is what you. Okay, well, let's say
Yeah.
our little CJ,
Mhm.
right? He's confused,
Mhm.
and he thinks that maybe he was born in the wrong body.
Yeah.
Correct.
We think CJ should stay as CJ. We don't think she should stay. She should change. He should change. However, not with everything going on, we don't know what's the right steps
Yeah.
to take.
Maybe
We
we're
need-
making a mistake by denying him that. So we come
Or
to
should
you,
we stick with our beliefs and say no? What do we do?
and we come to you.
Honestly,
He's like, oh shit, this isn't gonna not the one.
honestly, we've had families inquire, but we don't do like conversion therapy. We don't do that. Like that's not our area, our focus. So
But they're not asking you for like the therapy. They're just asking
don't-
you for your like, what would you do?
Yeah, talk to my kid and
What do you
figure out.
think
'Cause
I-
you said
what-
explore, right?
yeah, honestly, I could explore,
That's as
but
much as you can.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
the most that I can do. I'm not
tough.
anybody in that child's life to tell them what they should and shouldn't be.
True.
That's not my job
Yeah.
either. I'm here I'm not here to help you and guide you so that you can kind of have insight for yourself. But I'm not here to tell you who
You're
you
here
are.
to help them understand what they're going
Yeah, yeah.
through. Man.
But it's like, yeah, guide me. Which direction am I going?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it depends. That's a tough situation.
So
It is a
delicate.
very tough
Because if
situation.
the parents have one, but let's not even talk about. Let's say it's not even that topic. Let's
Mhm.
just say it's something completely different, and the parents are very passionate about one thing, and the kid's confused and wants to do something else. How does the dynamic then come together with the conversation between the children and the parents? Like, how do we bridge that? It's your job, right? You always said you want to bridge.
Yeah.
How do you bridge two differences if the child feels some certain way, but then the parents have a different belief system, or they think something else?
Mhm.
How do you bring that together?
It's a balance, and that's where I think it's exploring what would be the best thing for the child, right? And again, kids need love and they need boundaries. And so I think it's important to give kids a voice, right? Because if they're not heard when they're younger, they're not going to believe that their voice matters when they're older, right? And so they're not going to speak up and they're not going to have their own values and their own like opinions because they've never had a voice. They've never had a platform. Their parents weren't able to give them a platform to use that voice. And so it's important to honor a lot of what the kids say at the same time, again, what would be in the best interest for the child, you know? And it's important that parents take that standpoint and are able to value their child and what the child wants. At the same time, what does the child need? And it goes back to what is in the best interest of the child.
Yeah, because you could say, let's say the kid wants, I don't know, 16 years old. Hey, I want to get a tattoo. And it's like, well, yeah, exactly. That's permanent, right? I mean, it's permanent. Okay. But do it when you're 18 years. Like, if I deprive you of getting a tattoo, is your life somehow going to end or be more detrimental?
Get it when you're 18.
No, exactly.
When
it
you
won't.
make a conscious decision on it.
When you're 18, when you're an adult, and then
whatever.
you're legal, right? So you can substitute that tattoo with anything, really, right? So
you're comparing tattoos to a whole transition?
well, let's say think of permanent, right? You do something that's permanent. Like she's asking what's best for the child. I'm like, well, I don't think I would want to do something to the child that's permanently gonna alter them in that way. Right?
You're gonna cut their ears off. It sounds stupid, right? To cut kids' ears off. Yeah, that's what we're doing somewhere else.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. Sure.
Kid wants to cut his ears off. What do we do?
Let them make that decision when they're 18, and then it's like, well, that's on you, right? I mean, I think that's fair.
Again, it depends on each family. I think each family
Very
is
political
I was
response.
thinking that. Very political. Right? You know what you're
Come on,
doing.
dude. Deep down, we know what you're thinking, but that's fine. Yeah, we'll let it slide for therapy purposes. Damn, what was I gonna say? Oh, yeah. Question for you. So you only deal with children or families, including children. Do you ever deal with maybe people who are planning or thinking about having children at all?
Not yet, but I work with all populations. My specialty and what I feel super called to is children and teens. But I work with adults too, you know.
So let me ask you,
Mm-hmm.
what would you say to people who are, or couples who are in the process or planning or thinking about having kids? What are some sort of guidelines or things that we can practice in order to be more attentive, build security with our children, have them to be seen, safety? I'm missing an S. What's the other?
Soothing?
Soothe, seen, and secure.
What are things that you can tell maybe parents or couples who are thinking about or about to have children? What solutions would you give them in order for them to kind of prep for when the child comes?
Honestly, I think it's, again, those 4 S's are really important. I think
That's just an
sometimes, parents have a lot of pressure, right, where they think I have to do everything right and I can't fail this child. And just with the child feeling safe and secure with you, like that, you're already setting them up for success.
But how do they do that? How would you tell the parents to do that? Because they don't know how.
Yeah.
There's no guide. So what are some things that you can tell them, like, hey, if you really want to connect with the children, this would be a good direction to do it?
Well, when they're little, it's just being there for them, and it's listening to them, it's playing with them, it's engaging with them. It's, again, that's part with being seen, right? When the child is in distress, like, how are you there? Are you supportive? Are you just neglectful and you put them away, right? Like, what is it like for you as you're connecting with them? So it's just important to be there for the child, especially as they're getting older. And, you know, those questions when they're like, what is it, the terrible twos, when there's like all the whys and why does everything work like that, right? And
I had to deal with some nephews that, hey, this and this. Why? Well, it's because of this. Why? Dude, because I said so. Then you end up with that. It drives you crazy. Dude.
No, they're just trying to soak all that information.
It ain't terrible 2. It's like a terrible 4 or 5. You're old enough.
the kids are super curious, right? They just want to know
Yeah,
how
no,
everything
I'm
works,
JK.
right?
JK.
So parents are the one to be able to teach them, right, and have the patience to be there and meet them where they're at, right? Because that's the stage that they're in right there.
But you don't think you think it's easy? Because I'm just thinking now, like if I were to have a kid in the next 1, 2, 10 years, that's all my girlfriend.
That was a big jump.
I'm kidding, just kidding. Whatever it is. But yeah, what was I gonna say?
You plan on having a kid maybe within the
1,
next
2,
couple
10
years?
years.
Yeah, no, because I was gonna say, just thinking of like what would like, okay, you're saying to get down to their level, but how we don't know what that is. So then, how can we like? What are some things that we can do in order for us to be understanding? Because if we're older now, we understand things a little bit more. We've gone through things. So when we think and when we speak, like if I try to talk to a kid, I'll be like, dude, how do you not get it? Like, but then again, I'm 30 years old. I get it because it took me this long. So how do I get to that kid's level when I'm like, dude, are you dumb? Like, come on, dude, just do this. But deep down for them, they're like, I don't know. How can I like really get down to that level?
Yeah. It's trying to speak their language too, you know, and I think that's a big thing that I notice, right? Like we forget we're very advanced, right? Compared to a child, like we have so many years on them. Our brain is nowhere near the development of where their brain is, right? And so their language is not even close to understanding what we're able to communicate, right?
And the experiences that we've all had too.
Yeah. So I always go back to what did I need when I was 3 or 4 or 5, right? Like how did they speak to me?
So like
that made a
reflect back
difference?
to your own life at that time.
I don't even remember, dude. 3 years.
Well, no, but I'm sure you'll be reminded once the child starts talking to you, and then maybe things start coming back to you.
Back.
Yeah, it has to be, dude.
Yeah.
It's just meeting them where they're at, right? Like it's speaking their language, you know. At 4 years old, if you're talking to them like they're 12, they're not going to understand.
But but they do say, it's such a good discussion because they do say, like, when you have especially small kids, like, maybe you have some insight, like, don't speak to them like they're like babies or like, like talk to them like you would, not exactly like an old adult, but treat them like they're you know, like they're smart and capable human beings. That way they become more advanced, their language becomes more sophisticated, and they mature into healthier individuals. Also saying, like, teaching them how to control their emotions, right? So it's like when they're having a fucking tantrum because they can't get something, let them express and kind of go through that process, because they don't understand
what they're feeling.
And express it, vocalize it instead of just screaming, because they're trying to like convey that it's something's happening, right? So it's like you do have to. I feel like, don't you have to kind of talk to them into like in a you know, like an adult way?
And not only that, don't you? I also feel like maybe you as a parent, wouldn't you feel more comfortable also? Because instead of you being like, oh my god, come on, oh, like you could just be like, hey kid, like, look, like, come on, whatever. If you're able to talk to them like the way that you would talk, not to an adult like you said, but kind of dumbing it down a little bit to their level, while still being, you know, having that presence of respect, like, whatever. I feel like it also kind of makes you comfortable to try to connect with the child as well.
I mean, I don't have to. If I'm talking to a 3-year-old, I don't have to say, hey, wow. Like, I can say that's a dog. Right. Like, those little things, it's just okay. But if a child is dysregulated, right, and having a tantrum, they don't know how to speak up. So it's, if you don't teach them, they're not going to learn, right? So they still need the help navigating of like, hey, I'm here. I'm like with you. I see you. Can you please vocalize to me what's going on? Do you feel sad? Do you feel angry? Because you kind of have to prompt them, because they don't know. They're not born with the tools to say, this is how I feel, right? You kind of have to teach them.
Well, and then also tell them, like, how do you, like, you crying, like, I am upset, kind of help them associate the crying with being upset. Okay, like, why are you upset? Tell me why. Exactly. What can we do? And then so, because I work at a restaurant and I see like little brats running around all day, screaming, yelling, and you can tell, I can spot a good parent from a mile away, because just based on how the parent, the kids interact with me, right, how they speak, how they vocalize themselves, how to behave themselves, and how the parent talks to the child, right? So it's like, if your child's acting up, especially in public, I feel like it's so important to kind of like tell them, hey, listen, we're in public. This is what's happening. Behave yourself. If something's going wrong, or you want to step outside for a minute, like really educate that kid instead of just letting them run around. Right? Am I being unrealistic? Or
I don't know, bro. Because there are some outliers that even though you're a good parent, a good father, a good person, a good human, good mother, whatever, and you see them that they're trying to talk to these kids, they just refuse. They just rather would yell in your face. They don't care that you're their parents. You brought them into this world. They just want to fucking cry, yell, and make you feel like a piece of shit.
So then what do you do?
Well, that means to me there's something else going on, right? Like there's maybe this child's had ADHD and they're having a really hard time expressing themselves, and they literally can't, right? Maybe there's something going on, right? If it's not ADHD, maybe like there's something else going on, right? Where their brain is not letting them. It's not that they don't want to. It's not that, you know, that they don't have the desire to communicate with you. It's that they literally physically can't. Right. And so that's where I think coming to therapy or exploring what's going on, right? Because maybe there's something else.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we got to talk outside once we're done with this episode.
Okay.
I'm not even kidding.
What are your thoughts on, like, I have 2 questions. What are your thoughts on tough parenting in terms of like disciplining your child? Is that something that could ever be, like,
you're Cuban,
how far is too far? And saying, well, you know, my parents, I was raised like that, and I came out fine. It's like, that's not really an excuse. So it's like,
doesn't mean it's okay.
Exactly. Like, do you have a solid line to say, hey, I won't cross this line, or this is acceptable, this isn't?
I mean, there's definitely a solid line between what's, tough discipline and what's abuse, right?
Okay.
So,
What is it?
but I think that
What is it?
One
Well,
punch instead of two.
No.
Open hand instead of closed.
no, I think punching is definitely
kidding.
out of not
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, weird. Not
And
advocating for violence unless.
Unless you deserve it.
and I was raised Cuban, so I know like the chancletazo and things like that is
cinto.
kind of
The
cinto,
freaking-
right? Like
the belt.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
sandal,
yeah,
the
yeah.
La chancleta.
That I know.
that's
That I
what's
know.
bad. Oh, you
No,
know.
but
Yeah.
that.
You know chancleta?
Yeah, of course.
Interesting.
that's I think those are common for at least for Cubans. Like I can say like I grew up around that a lot. So again, there's like the fine line. Does the kid not feel safe? Does the kid feel threatened? Does the kid, is this kid showing up to my office with bruises? Right? Like all of that is very telling of maybe there's a line being crossed, but that's also very subjective, right? But as long as this kid does not feel safe, doesn't feel unsafe, and the line is not being crossed, then it really just depends on the family and how they discipline.
Because the whole thing of like soft parenting, and it's like you let them cry it out, or you let them break stuff, right?
Mhm.
Like
Let him get over it.
Yeah,
Let him
yeah.
Finish
Like
the tantrum to finish.
exactly. It's like that didn't fly in my household, dude. Like I see some of the videos you see like on TikTok, and it's like the kids is destroying property and damaging stuff, and it's like, oh yeah, little Jimmy, he'll be all right.
He's going through.
Give him a few minutes, and it's like, no, what the fuck you doing?
In a few minutes, his house is gonna be burned down.
Yeah. The worst thing is if you do it in public, right? Like at a restaurant or something like that, where it's like they just kind of annihilate the place, and it's like, what do you think?
Yeah, but you see, I think that's why it's so important that there's no template. Like, there's no right way. Every family has its own homeostasis. How it works and how it flows, and what makes that family work. And so that's why it's so individualized too. Like, there's no right or wrong aside from, again, what's actually legal and what's illegal, right? But aside from that, it's
legal,
very
illegal.
individualized.
Which one do you want?
That's fucked up. Just kidding.
Gonna get this shit fucking bad. Oh no.
You had another question.
I had a second question. What are your thoughts on? I'm sure you've come across this. What are your thoughts on like social media, like tablets and all that stuff for like children, particularly small children? Let's say, I don't know, under the age of 10 or something, or 12.
Yeah.
Or is it appropriate? Is it not? At what point would it become appropriate? Because you had said something like those years are very, very crucial, right, for a child's development. So I think it's also regulating what information they take in.
Yeah.
But you see a lot of kids roaming on TikTok and YouTube, and you can't really control all that stuff. And even if you have like those
Parental controls.
yeah, but kids are super smart. They can get out of that in a heartbeat, especially if they're just a little bit older.
Yeah.
But what do you think about that, like in terms of the social media access and giving them access to like tablets and stuff like that?
I just think it's important for parents to know that the moment you give a child a phone, you give them access to everything. Like, you give them access to everything, like the world. And so that includes the good and the bad, right? So it's just being really aware of, is my child ready for that? Because I know some kids mature earlier than others, right? And do they know right from wrong? Like, do they know what's okay and what's not okay, right? And still having access to what it is that they're doing. Again, kids need love and boundaries, right? So yes, they might really love a phone, but can they handle it? Because with freedom comes responsibility.
Sure.
Right? So, and parents still having the access to know what it is that their child is doing, so that the moment that there may be something that's off, they can catch it quickly and they can redirect. Right. So again, it really depends on the child.
If you had a child today, and would you give them access to like a phone or a tablet? What age would you feel like, okay, I'm comfortable with them? I don't know, it varies because it's depending on the child, how advanced they are. But in an estimate,
I think
what
around
do you think they're ready
middle
for?
school, right? But that's where they're kind of having a little bit more freedom because school looks differently, and then But aside from that, I think middle school maybe for me. I don't know because I'm not a mom yet.
And I would also say that probably already in middle school, maybe even in elementary school now, 'cause they're already using technology like iPads and stuff to start doing learning sessions and stuff like that. So I wouldn't doubt that by middle school, you have no choice but to have some sort of exposure to it.
Yeah, middle school.
Books are a thing of the past.
Middle school is like what, 10 years old and stuff like that.
Middle school,
11?
no, that's like
11, 12,
13.
13. Yeah.
Okay.
Around
11,
there.
12, 13.
That's when I got my first cell phone.
Yeah, me too.
Viste.
Yeah, that's
I didn't
sixth
have a
grade.
phone until I was like 17 years old.
Oh wow.
You don't have phones in Germany?
Well, I was here in the States. I would like use my dad's flip phone and shit like that.
I had a Nokia. Those indestructible.
I had
Yeah.
a Nokia too.
Didn't you
That
have
was
like
my
a
first one.
BlackBerry or something like that? Didn't you have that?
No, dude.
In high school.
In high, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
I
Yeah, in
didn't
high
have a
school.
BlackBerry in high school. I had a Motorola Razr, boy.
I didn't have a
I
phone
was
till-
like about yeah, it was cool.
Oh, you were pretty cool.
The Razr, that was the thing, dude. If you didn't have a Razr, you were a scrub.
I
Did you?
never knew that.
I didn't have a phone.
Scrub.
I had
'Cause you guys are
BBM
losers.
With
Did you have
the
a sidekick?
BlackBerry. Oh yeah, I did.
You had a
The
I know, I got
little-
the sidekick.
yeah.
My parents couldn't afford it.
Those shits are expensive. Like
They
that.
were.
dude.
They were like the
Yes.
iPhone.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And now everybody has a phone. Every
Yeah.
kid, like 4-year-olds, have phones.
Do you think that's too young? Maybe because then I feel like parents now, especially like we talk about movies like Sound of Freedom and stuff, and child trafficking, how much it's getting a lot of
Yeah.
attention. And like
Yeah.
I'm hearing articles recently, like Only in Dade and like
Mhm.
Lifestyle Miami, of like Dolphin Mall. I don't know if it was true, but like some issue
Oh,
at
yeah,
Dolphin
yeah,
Mall.
yeah.
You heard about it too?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's supposedly like 10 kids or like 8 kids went into like the bathroom and then like one was missing, like either 7 came out or 9 came out or whatever.
Yeah.
Christ.
And they're like, what the hell, what happened? And then supposedly like there was like something going around of like them trafficking children. It's more normal than you think, man. It's actually a lot more.
Fortunately.
It's very scary.
Yeah.
So
Very
then things like
scary.
that, when you look at the phones, I mean, I don't know if, I mean, just think about it. One, you could say as a parent, like, well, okay, well, I can connect with my kids. So if I'm calling because something happens, an emergency at school, they can call me directly, and I'll know. But then it's like they're also exposed to so many things that are
Yeah.
out there and all the negatives. What if that kind of puts them in a situation that,
Yeah, but if you just need them to be able to call you, you can just give them like a flip phone. You can still
Exactly.
buy those. A Metro PCS, you get like one of those little cheap ones.
yeah, but
Number
then when your
saved.
kid sees that little Jimmy's best
That's the
friend,
problem.
Ryan, has an iPhone, and then little Jimmy's like, Daddy,
Right,
Ryan has an iPhone though.
yeah,
The new one. I have this fucking. Well, no, I have this thing. What are you gonna do then?
I mean, I would like to believe that I can be assertive and say, that's him, and you're gonna have yours when you're old
Yeah,
enough.
you say that because you don't have a kid. I'm sure when you get
Yeah, I can't.
little CJ.
Wouldn't be CJ, but maybe I
That's
guess.
a hasty thing.
Yeah, I would like to believe I could be put my foot down, but it's tough, man. I don't have kids, but I
Yeah.
feel like there's definitely a line where it's like too young,
Yeah.
and I feel like
Mhm.
anything prior to middle school is too young.
Let me ask you, because you were born here. You were born
Yeah.
you were born here. You were not born here.
No.
What was your upbringing like when you were in Germany? You were
Yeah.
lived only in Germany, right? When
Yeah.
you were a kid. What was your upbringing like? Now, so when you listen to everything that's going on in this country and the and how people are being upbringing now with the whole like transition identity and all that stuff, but even when you were younger, maybe when you were learning of like, oh well, I was raised like this. So compared to you, do you see anything
Yeah.
bizarre, anything different, or anything like this in Europe wouldn't like this would never fly in Germany?
Well, no, I mean, in Germany, like people were very acceptant of, at least when I was living there. But there was no like people. You wouldn't talk about like being gay or being trans and like transitioning. It just wasn't a thing. But this was also like in the early 2000s.
No, but even
You
that's
know?
why I know. Like, go back to that. Like, were you disciplined hard? Were you not? When you wanted little iPhone, were your parents like, okay, Marvin, I'll give you the iPhone?
I didn't have a phone. I
Did you have
not-
tantrums?
No, I didn't. I mean, my mom, we were all very well behaved. I have 7 siblings, so it was a big family with 8 kids, and my mom kind of raised us on her own. My dad wasn't really living in Germany, so it was just me, my mom, and the siblings, and my grandparents. But no, we were very well behaved. There wasn't much physical discipline. Maybe when I was smaller here and there, but like not in a like abusive way. So no, like we were just, this is what it is, and you were listening. And my mom did a really fine job.
So why don't you talk about that? How did that work? How was it that you were
I
nurtured and raised?
my mom was always very affectionate, always very loving, and I'm the same way. I'm very affectionate. I'm very loving. I'm very like I'm very kind, and
Mhm.
I love people. Not that many people actually, but the people that I love them
Yeah, me.
dearly. I love you.
I love you too.
But no, I was raised to always say thank you, open the door, please, you're welcome. Like
Yeah.
I was always, it was just kind of like a given. You go to a restaurant, you behave. You go to a supermarket, you act accordingly. You don't yell in public. You don't like. That's kind of how I was raised. Like very. But Germans are like very like proper. Like you arrive on
What you trying to say,
time.
dude?
Because in the U.S., especially Hispanics, are like a little bit.
Miami's separate from the U.S.
Yeah,
It's so
yeah,
different.
let's talk Miami Hispanic culture. It's like very, it's people show up late, people stay long as hell. Like it's like loud and a little bit obnoxious. But they obviously they have their positive qualities on
He's
its
just
own.
a hater because he doesn't understand.
The culture is
you
so
understand-
The
different.
culture is there.
Yeah.
He just don't understand
Nice.
Spanish. Once you learn how to speak
Well, I'm
Spanish,
learning actually. I have the Duolingo.
Duolingo.
Yeah.
Dude, you gotta tell your girl to just talk to you in Spanish.
We talked about that. We're gonna.
That's what I'm trying
set
to coach
time
Christina
aside.
on.
Yeah. I'm trying to learn Spanish.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, my girlfriend speaks Spanish, but not that well. But like, I'm trying to do little sessions with her where it'll be like, oh, after this time, like, I'm just gonna talk to you in Spanish.
Yeah.
Try to reply in Spanish as well.
That's
if you
so
don't know,
cool.
say it in English.
That's awesome.
I'll then reply it back to you in Spanish, and then I'm gonna have you say it again in Spanish. That way, you are familiar with the
Yeah.
words and kind of the phrases.
That's amazing.
That's
So that way, it's almost like real life because they say, you want to learn Italy, go to Italy. Italian, go to
Yeah.
Italy. You want to
Yeah.
learn Spanish, go over here. So it's almost like the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm gonna force you to speak, and then you'll associate with English.
Well, that's the best way to learn because when I moved here, I was 16. I didn't really speak English, but it's like I had to learn. Like I went to high school, we went to high school together, and it's like I didn't know anybody, and all you had to way to communicate was through speaking. So you kind of had to
Yeah.
like adapt, sink or swim kind of thing. And so I think that's the best way to kind of learn. But no, to go back when you were saying, no, I mean, I think parents have so much more control than they realize. And a lot of times I feel like parents nowadays, not for anything, it's just like a lot of parents they don't want to take accountability. They're lazy. Like parents nowadays, all they do is they grab it. Not everybody, but a lot of them, they just give them the iPhone so they're quiet. They let them do this so they don't complain. It's like, dude, like take accountability. Oh, because they blame everybody else for their children's mistakes and upbringing. Oh no, he's a really good kid and stuff like that. It's like you're accountable for your child and you're responsible for your child. And I feel like a lot of times today in this day and age, parents aren't really taking accountability. They're not doing a good job at raising their children. Because dude, you're responsible for that person, and so that's my take.
I think it's hard. Parents are human too, and they have their own needs, and life gets tough. And I'm telling you, I don't have kids, and I get overwhelmed. I get stressed. I can't imagine coming home after a heavy, day at work and having to be there emotionally present and like provide for this child. Like, I know right now I'm not ready to have a kid because I am not ready for that. I come home and I am fried. I just want to turn on my Netflix and go to sleep. Like, I do not want to be bathing and feeding and taking care of a child and sitting down and doing homework. Like, absolutely not. Right? So I have grace for parents because it's not easy. It's a lot of responsibility. And then you have a lot of authority over the child, like you're saying. You do. And so it's hard when you have a little human that constantly depends on you, but you also have responsibilities and your own needs and your own family and all of this other stuff.
So well, very well said. You're absolutely right. I mean, parents. I'm not trying to fucking trash parents.
No, at all.
Some of them might do, but
They deserve it.
a lot of them do. But no, you're right. Being a parent is super hard, and it's interesting that you're aware that I'm not ready to have a kid today. You're about to be 25.
Yeah.
Do you feel like is there something that you think of like I want to be like? How would you know when you're ready to have children? Like. Maybe for you personally, seeing how you interact with kids, seeing the big responsibilities it takes. Because once you have kids, it's a lifelong commitment, right?
That's it.
Do you feel like there's a particular thing that you want to achieve or certain things that you want to have in order
You're waiting for something
prior to have children?
specifically.
I think for me, what's most important is that I'm in like a very committed marriage, right? Where I know my partner's got me, right? I think before I used to be like, okay, once I achieve this in my career, then I'll be ready to have a kid, and I don't, from what I've heard from parents, every time I've asked, it's like, you're never ready to have a kid. No matter if you have it all going for you, you're still not ready to have a kid. Like nobody's ever ready to have a child.
But you could be readier.
You can. I feel like you definitely
Right?
can.
Yeah.
Like, can I financially even support this child? If I can, if I'm in debt and I can't even afford to take myself out on a Friday night, can I really afford a child?
Sounds like me.
I need you to meet
Yeah.
my girlfriend. No, I like that you brought up you guys were talking about the whole parenting and kind of the responsibility. So I was getting a haircut today. I was talking to my barber. It's the summer, and I'm like, hey, when does school start again? And he says August, end of August, whatever. And then I'm like, oh, so what is it like, with the children? Like, what's going on? He goes, he's like, you know what? Oh, because he's also very active. He does jujitsu. He exercises and stuff like that. He's 43. He's 40 something. All right, shout out Jose. Finish line cuts. Thank you for cutting my hair. Known him for like 15 years, I think. But anyways, where they're talking and I tell him, I'm like, dude, like you're 40. Like I'm 30 years old. And with everything that I have on my plate right now, like when I get home, I'm exhausted. I'm like, dude, I don't even know how you do it. And he tells me, he's like, when you have children, he goes, look, when I turned 40, I guess his children were at a certain age that he's like, whatever you want to do doesn't matter anymore. It's your kids are your number one priority. So if you got to wake them up and take them to baseball, you got to wake up an hour, 2 hours early to make sure you eat your breakfast. So make sure that you're doing your stuff to prep them for stuff. You then got to drive them somewhere else. Oh, okay. Oh, you wanted to go hang out with your friends tonight? No, unfortunately, your kid has a baseball game or whatever. Oh, and then he's going to have tutoring over here. And then your kid says he wants to go over here because he's hungry and he wants to eat that. And you're like, fuck, I thought I wanted to eat spaghetti tonight, but he wants to have chicken nuggets. So I guess we're going to McDonald's. So that's kind of what he tells me. It's like, whatever you want to do, you are no longer the priority. It always comes down to the kid, and whatever the kid wants, like you take second place. So whatever it is that they want, that they have to do stuff, that's like where it goes. So it's tough because almost what you're saying, like you get home, you're like, man, I'm exhausted. Like just imagine then having to do something for the child. Yeah. So I guess where I was taking this is for you, you are seeing someone or no?
Yeah.
You are seeing someone. How long have you guys been together?
A few months.
Few months. Okay. Have you guys at all talked about where you guys see the future in terms of children, or at least opinions on children?
Yeah, and at least for me, again, it goes back to I won't have any, or I won't even consider kids until I'm married.
Interesting.
No, that's No.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, well, that's fine.
Yeah.
But then, I guess for you guys, how is it that, with your experience that you have to deal with and like the clients that you have, the children, the parents, does it make you kind of hesitant to have children? Does it make you more prepared? Are you looking more forward to it because of what you've learned and what you've had to deal with? Or kind of like, what's that like?
Honestly, it gets me excited, right? Because I think family is beautiful. And I think family is foundational. So I really enjoy the work that I do because, again, I feel like I'm constantly learning, right? And I get to see, and parents also teach me. Like, I'm not the only one informing parents. I feel like they also show me a lot because, obviously, that's the world that I'm not invested in because I'm not a parent, right? So I get to learn a lot, and I feel like I'm exposed to a lot of things that maybe I wouldn't if I didn't do what I do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
You were going to say something about Christian religion, marriage.
Marriage.
Have children before you get married. You were like, oh.
That's how I said it? Do it again?
No.
So how how long you been seeing this guy?
A few months.
A few months, yeah.
Pay attention?
Yeah.
He's trying to like backtrack.
Exactly.
Get to it again.
I'm trying to build a rapport. Come on, brother.
It's part of the process.
Yes. So how was for you, like, have you guys spoken about these things in terms of having kids, getting married, stuff like that?
What's a few months? What is a few months?
3 or 4 months now.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Yeah, because I don't know, maybe 8 months, then you're like...
A few
months.
A few months, 8 months.
No,
That's a lot.
It's a few months. I've been dating for a few months. How many?
A few months, 36
36.
months. 36 months.
That's good. Yeah.
That was really in sync.
Yeah.
It's not the funniest.
That was
scary.
cool.
It's very scary.
It's awesome.
Sorry.
Yeah, so how was that for you? Because obviously, you deal with children, you're faith-based.
Yeah.
Obviously you're young, but you're obviously very mature. You're in your profession that you love doing. So things seem to be falling in place quite nicely for you. But obviously you say, I'm not ready. But when you start dating somebody, those are certain conversations you gotta have with that person.
Yeah.
Have those conversations been had already?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was receptive to it. He was like, oh.
Yeah. Thankfully, yeah. And I think, again, it goes back to my faith. And I think my faith has been very directional for me on how I want to build my life and the vision that I have for my future. So it's nice that I have somebody that kind of aligns with the vision.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, we're a podcast that focuses on relationships and dating, and the reason we brought you on is to talk about your level of expertise, which is children, which is mental health and therapy. Yeah. But a big part is also having kids with the right person, right? And it all starts at the beginning, which is where you are right now in a way, right? With that person, where it's like you have to set your boundaries, you have to set your non-negotiables, you have to have the same. Faith is a big one. Yeah. Religion, marriage. Marriage. It's like in and out. I know. Marriage, like a lot of these things are like in a way non-negotiable, right? And it's like there's somebody out there vaccination is a big part as well. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that people don't really talk about, and then they end up with somebody 2 years later, and it's like, we don't really see eye to eye on these things where it's like, can't really compromise on marriage, right?
Yeah.
Can't really compromise on children, right? Okay, are you going to have it or yes or no? It's not, an in between kind of. Vaccination is also a very big topic for people that a lot of times people don't even realize until oftentimes it's too late. And then people find themselves in unhappy relationships where it's like, it should have been avoided altogether. And so I think you're in the position where you get to ask those questions, right? So it's super important.
Absolutely. And I'm very future oriented. So I feel like also we've gotten to the age where it's like, we're not here to waste time, So I think it's, again, and I always go back to my kids are only going to be as healthy as my marriage and as my relationship. So if I can work towards building a healthy relationship now and setting myself up to have a healthy marriage, then why would we not be healthy parents, So I think about it like I'm already working towards having healthy kids because I'm pouring into my relationship how I want to pour into as a mother.
I saw a video the other day on Instagram that it said the greatest gift that you can give your children is a healthy relationship with your spouse or your partner. Yeah. Because then they're literally going to mimic everything. Exactly. Now they're literally learning firsthand, absorbing everything of what it's like to be into a happy, identifying what true happiness is. Yeah. Man, that's awesome.
They flow out of your marriage, literally.
The big part is also, we've talked about it with Dr. Heasty, and he's a big believer in it, where it's like, you there's no love. Like, obviously you have incredible love for your children, but the way you love your husband, the way you love your spouse, that person has to, in a way, be your first choice, right? Yeah. That's I don't want to say you love them more, because you don't, but that person is your person. Yeah. You're going to spend the rest of your life with that person. Meanwhile, your children, they will see how you love this person, and they will grow up, and they will leave the house, and they will build a new life with somebody else, right? And eventually they'll love somebody, hopefully the way you love your husband, or somebody loves their wife. So I think you do have to love your spouse unconditionally, and you have to show them that your husband was there first, your wife was there first. They have to be a priority. Doesn't mean you neglect the child, obviously not. No. But you cannot let your marriage suffer because of your children. Yeah.
But that's also kind of unfair to say, because think of then children who they're conceived and with parents that they're dysfunctional, or maybe it was a one-night stand and now they're single moms or single dads even. At that point, what do you do there? Because they don't have the example of the two parents to really be raised in that environment.
Well, what I would say is, obviously, if you're not with the just because you're not with the biological parent doesn't mean you cannot find somebody to love and to build a life with, right? Like that person, ideally you're not going to stay there alone for the rest of your life. So what you can do is to find somebody else who you love, and then your son or daughter will see you love somebody who isn't their biological parent, right? But that doesn't mean that you don't love them, right? So it's like, sometimes things don't work out. You're not together with the father of the child or whatever, the mother. You meet somebody else, you love them, and you show your child this is how you love somebody, right? Even if they're not that child's parent.
Have you had to deal with children who have divorced parents? How does that? What are some, I guess, X factors that come into play there versus parents that are together? Has it changed anything, or it's all the same?
I think it just goes back to, like, I have to really get familiar with what the custody is like, and then what are the parents' relationship. What is their relationship like, even though they're not together? Like, is there respect? Is there proper communication? Is the communication healthy, right? Is one parent talking badly about the other parent with the kid? Like, all of that comes into play too as opposed to when parents are together. Like, that kind of, it looks differently because you still have to explore a relationship and communication. But obviously when they're separated, like, a lot of other things go into play, especially what is the custody like? Like, how much is the child with the mom and how much is the child with the dad?
So I was reading something.
Okay.
Very important. We're going to circle back to that in a second.
You all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Go proceed.
No, it's not about that.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about that.
No.
Oh, okay.
You have anything else that you wanted to?
No.
Okay.
You have anything else?
No.
No? Wrap it up then?
I guess, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want to.
Senorita, is there anything else that we may have left off that you feel like it's important for you to share with us? Any of the topics that you've written to us that we didn't cover?
I don't think so. I think
Got a pretty good gist.
Yeah, I think we did a great
You
job.
did a pretty solid job.
Yeah.
All right. So as we come now to the end of the episode, we like to end with a final thought. So it's time to break up. Sorry, it's not you, it's us. Anything that you want to say to the camera, that maybe a quote that you live that's very important to you, that you live by, maybe just something that you want to say to your younger self, or anything that you like to educate that you want to just sign off on. You can say it to the camera, you can say it to us, however you're most comfortable, and then you can go ahead and sell yourself where they can find you, things like that. So stage is yours, however you want.
Honestly, I think for me, it's just been very life-changing for me to have a sense of identity, right? So it's just important that as parents that you're able to kind of help the child develop the identity, right? And then you being firm in your own identity, right? So what is your purpose and what is your calling? Because I don't need to compete or compare with somebody else, because I know I have the unique gifts and I have the unique talent that it's not going to take away from you. You know, my light shining in this area is not going to outshine yours, because your light shines brighter in that area, you know? And so I'm not intimidated by your light, because I can actually magnify it with our talents together, right? So I just think it's important that, and you know, now that we've seen so much comparison with social media and things like that, that it's important that we know we have our own unique talents and our own unique gifts, and nobody else is going to take away from that.
Beautiful.
Solid.
And where can they find you by yourself?
EdenTherapyCo.com. That's our website. And if not, on Instagram, Leslie Dennis Mental Health Counseling. So MHC.
Beautiful, perfect. I want to give her
after, because I need to ask her something before.
Okay.
Yeah, after we'll talk after.
Okay.
So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, Leslie. It was an honor to have you on. Thank you so much for coming.
It was an honor being
and
here.
educating.
Thank you.
I'm gonna bring my girlfriend in now for pictures, but that's on the ending. Thank you, everybody. Love you guys. Till next time.
Be sure to subscribe.
Now is when you think people are gonna watch up until this last second.
So, yeah, if you haven't, subscribe.
For sure, they're subscribing now.
If we're talking, we'd like to believe that they're listening.
We're gonna have a spike on subscriptions right now.
Just because of that, it's gonna happen.
Peace.
It's gonna happen. You gotta pray about it.